Hi, everyone. Welcome to the AI Monetisation Podcast. I'm Binny Mathews, the co-founder of Project Pro. In this podcast, as you know, we bring to you industry leaders to discuss business outcomes with AI. We are completely honored to have Ari Kaplan with us. Bear with me while I introduce you, Ari. There's quite a lot of ground to cover. Ari is the head of evangelism at Databricks, where he's a trusted AI leader and thought partner to hundreds of C-level executives across the world, especially in Fortune 500, and contributes to close to $50 million of revenue and pipeline involvement. So while at Databricks, Ari also co-authored two very popular books, the Data Intelligence Platform for Dummies and the Data Lakehouse Platform for Dummies, which happens to be the most downloaded ebook in company history. And this is something we'll cover in our conversation. Ari previously used to also be the AI evangelist at DataRobo and a VP of analytics at Nielsen. And also Ari's on the Intel's AI board of advisors. Perhaps one of my favorite parts of Ari's background is he is the guy after whom the movie Moneyball was inspired from Ari's work creating the analytics department at the Chicago Cubs Major League Baseball team. Ari is also honored as a Caltech Alumni of the Decade and very frequently quoted on BBC, CNBC, New York Times, and CNN. Ari, thank you for taking time to do this. Welcome to this show.
Oh, thanks, Benny, and congratulations on co-founding Project Pro. Incredible. We were talking beforehand, so super exciting time to be in the world of data and AI. And thank you for everyone listening out there.
Thank you, Ari, for those kind words. To begin with, Ari, I was just curious, given your role and passion for evangelizing technology, right? And a lot of evangelizing has to do with storytelling. And we are also at this inflection point of AI where there are, people are looking for ROI and outcomes. How do you kind of bring together the concept of storytelling and the ROI outcomes when you kind of talk to C-level leaders?
Yeah, great thought. And a lot of it is people just want to be told stories, told outcomes, as opposed to being sold to, or just having this feeling that, tell me about your business, knowing that in 10 minutes, they're going to give you like a pitch for their business. A lot of people just want to be educated, maybe entertained. We're all humans in the end, so stories that they can relate to, emotions, and then, then of course, at some point, you want to understand, what does this mean to my business? So different levels. There are some people that just want stories on how can they adopt technology, what are the use cases, the values, the KPIs, and others like being at the strategic level. So, what does this mean for the business? What's out there in the world? How are other people succeeding? How are other people failing that I might be able to avoid? But that's really it. People resonate better if things are told as a story. And that somehow, I don't know, I was born that way. A lot of people listening probably similar as well, but that's just the way my brain thinks. Is I like to paint the picture, be empathetic to whom I'm talking to.
Mm-hmm. And just staying on this topic for a minute longer, because it's a very critical topic, both from evangelism and for entrepreneurs like me as well, which is, what would you say are the key components of a storytelling kind of narrative when you're discussing AI and business outcomes?
Yeah, it's and I like you brought up Moneyball. A lot of times people that you're speaking to, they just want actionable insights. They want to understand, how did other people succeed or fail, and being put into their shoes. You also have to understand the audience you're speaking with. So like when I work with a player, they don't care what R squared is of this data science model, like how good the fit was. They just want to know, should I what pitch types is this pitcher going to throw to me? What are the strengths, weaknesses, and habits of my
Hmm.
opponent, and
Hmm.
then branching out outside of sports, same concept. You're a retailer, you're in fintech, healthcare. You want to know the strengths, weaknesses, and habits of your supply chain, hyper personalization for your customers. So
Hmm.
that's kind of like the one of the storytellings is like know your audience.
Hmm.
Other people, like when I speak to the architecture
Yeah.
persona, they're
Yeah.
like, I get it. Gen AI is cool. I already know that. I hear that every day.
Right.
What can I do? How can
Hmm.
I add governance layer to it? Or here's like 10 different platform architectures. Which one is good for me? So kind of
Hmm.
knowing the audience is a big key as well. And then
Hmm.
just engaging with them, pause. If you're in I just spoke to about 3,000 people in Amsterdam, and I would take cues by people nodding
Hmm.
or laughing or
Hmm.
booing even, and
Hmm.
adjusting my presentation. But if it's even smaller, then
Hmm.
just have it conversational, show of hands, or shout out, whatever it is, where you're from,
Yeah.
or what are you actively you're technical or not. So make it interactive. When I do Zooms, have people the ability to do chat. So that's all part of the interactive narrative. So just the advice: know your audience.
Yeah.
Don't assume everyone knows the terms you're speaking.
Hmm.
So sometimes define things. Don't assume they're at the level or have the background you have.
Yeah. No, that's very, very actionable and tangible. Ari, thanks for that. And I imagine as in your role as an evangelist, you are communicating value to C-level officers, and also given Databricks' insane open source base, also to individual developers. And you mentioned one differentiation, the kind of communication is that the architects want to listen to more tangible use cases. Are there other nuances in how you communicate to business unit leaders versus technologists?
Yeah, there's the very technical people, they love doing hands-on like workshops, for example.
Mm,
So actually putting hands on keyboard, we do workshops where we get thousands of people, like in a virtual perspective, each one
mhm,
having their own workspace. I've never been at a company where I've seen that at that scale. It's pretty amazing.
mhm,
So the technical people love actually trying to implement stuff, getting data sets.
mm,
uh, One level above it, sometimes people love seeing demos, but when I say a demo, not a 20-minute, here's how I click every button, but a story. So, like one thing people like, if you follow me on LinkedIn, is like 60-second, maybe 3 or 4 minute demos where I just go through a story. Here's the raw data, here's what you do, here's the end result, as opposed to every single click through. And then I'm just like, hey, if you want more details, here's like a longer demo. But then the executives, a lot of times just want to know what is going to be the value to the business. A
mhm,
lot of times, uh, especially years ago, like and even now with Gen AI, people tend to be tinkering like an academic. Nothing against academics or tinkering, but when it gets to a certain point, 6 months, 12 months go by, and you're
mhm.
like, what are we doing with Gen AI? Or are we just kind of playing around since there's a new model every week coming out?
Yeah.
How is this going to translate to having fun playing in the sandbox to production? So those are executives, but I'll tell you, uh, more and more we're getting higher and higher level executives
Mhm,
talking with us, like
mhm,
CEOs, like even outside of technology, the
mhm.
president, CEOs saying, how can data and AI and Gen AI help us, which I haven't seen to this level years ago. So maybe 5, 10 years ago, the
Right.
conversations would be, everything is data. Then you have to kind of whisper, AI or classical AI, you should try it, but you're kind of embarrassed to say it since people think, Terminator movies. And now
Right.
it's almost opposite. Everyone's shouting AI, and you have to go, but you still need the underlying, foundation of data to
Mhm,
get best insights from
mhm,
that.
mhm.
So yeah, right now we're in a state um, of extreme exuberance from executives that just want to know what's real, what's not, and things are changing every day. They don't know who to trust in terms of what's reality and what's just like in a test environment.
That kind of brings me to my next question, the last point which you made, which is also kind of going back to your background in sports analytics, right? So much of decision in sports, I assume, is partly gut based, and then you brought in the thinking of number crunching based decision as well. And I assume, team managers and owners kind of did some combination of gut based as well as number based decision making. How is that playing out in the world of AI, where you have to make some kind of faith-based investment for a potential ROI coming up kind of a few quarters down the line? How's that discussion typically had?
Yeah. So yeah, first with the sports, I've been blessed to have been both on the data analytics side and
Hmm.
on what the gut feel, in other words, the scouting side. How do
Hmm.
you look at players as humans as well as numbers?
Yeah.
So, and this is very relevant to the second part of your question. So, some characteristics of human behavior are quantifiable and repeatable, like patterns of how your biomechanics of throwing or hitting or running are. That's kind of based on data we already know. And then from scouting, it's projecting that forward. So the numbers are really good when you're already a professional player and you
Mm.
already have knowledge. But if you are trying to do an analysis of, there's over 1 million 15-year-old kids playing, football,
Hmm.
cricket, or what have you, and you
Right.
could see their characteristics, but how do you project what will happen 10 years from now? And that's where numbers could at least quantify how quick they run or their instincts, but the gut kind of has to help project what might they turn into in the future.
Hmm.
Similar in business world, like consumer behavior, some numbers like how they click on a website or
Hmm.
their path to purchase might be good, but in reality, they're humans with human behavior. So for me, that is one of the most fascinating parts of AI today is how can it kind of merge human behavior and quantification to do things like hyper-personalized advertisements or predicting when like some physical manufacturing process
Yeah.
might break down
Hmm.
or predicting fraud in financial transactions.
Hmm.
So that's very applicable. And then yeah, like how do you do the ROI before you implement something? And there's a couple different ways to look at it. One of the is it is a it's like an incremental improvement. We are already selling products. How can we change our price?
Hmm.
Um, if we do this like a what if scenario, if we increase things by 5%, how will that affect the volume or the profitability? Those
Hmm.
are the easy ones to quantify.
Hmm.
But the fascinating thing is with Gen AI, a lot of this is like a fundamental innovation or a fundamental switch. And
Hmm.
that's where you need that gut feel.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and sometimes, like in the real world, you could do a limited rollout or A/B testing, try things out in one store, for example. And
Hmm.
other times you can't. Like if you are going, like the National Basketball Association
Yeah.
invests tons of money to like make the floor filled with LED um, signs to make it more exciting, and you
Hmm.
just don't know until you do it. You can do focus groups that could give you some signal, but that sometimes is just a leap of faith.
Yeah.
And some leaders have that,
Hmm.
and some
Hmm. Makes sense. That's very helpful with a set of action pointers on how do you think about gut feeling plus more tangible ROI outcomes. Given your role at Databricks right now, Ari, could you help us understand how data platforms have kind of evolved over the last decade, and where are we at right now? What changes AI going to do to the evolution of data platforms? Very curious about that.
yeah, it's a super exciting time to be in, and
Hmm.
the we're in the age Gen AI, or what we call data intelligence platform. But
Hmm.
about a decade ago, I also had worked for Oracle Corporation. At one point was president of the worldwide Oracle user group when they acquired MySQL and Java, and
Hmm.
PeopleSoft. And I love Oracle and the folks there and the customers over there, but it is basically a traditional relational database, or a data warehouse. So
Hmm.
that's largely structured type of data, numbers, letters, date fields, things like that. And it would scale to tens of billions of records. And at the time, 10 years ago, people would say, you don't really need more than 10 or 100 billion records. There's no use case we could think of. And
Hmm.
then social media, IoT, unstructured data, videos, PDFs, just started blasting the world.
Hmm.
And now, so that was like traditional data warehouse, business intelligence,
Hmm.
reporting on what were our sales. And then data lakes came into play. And this is more like file based. How do you have a laptop, just dump all of your PDFs into one directory. If you might have heard data swamps, it's just like giant stores of unstructured data,
Hmm.
but very good for getting other types of like AI, classical machine learning type of use cases. But it was very different, harder to govern, um, and challenges like that. Uh, Hard to understand what your assets were and tagging it all, managing it all, governing it all. So
Hmm.
then you had but very, very valuable for predictive analytics.
Hmm.
But then you have two completely different platforms,
Hmm.
a data warehouse and a data lake. That caused all sorts of problems. You have multiple vendors, so you don't have unified. You have data silos. You have to copy data back and forth, doubling or quadrupling or more of your cost. So
Hmm.
that's when the term lakehouse came about. And Databricks, we came up with that term, but it's not like Databricks is the only lakehouse platform. There's a lot
Hmm.
of companies out there, and it solves so many pains out there, like one unified platform, eliminate data silos. You could do AI, for example, on structured and unstructured data much more easily. That now 3/4 of all enterprises have a lakehouse of one form or another. So that
Hmm.
was like really the rage. That's what got Databricks, to grow, from like close to zero to like billion or so in revenue, 2 billion in revenue, I think at that point. And then really in the last 2 years, Gen AI came out.
Hmm.
About the last year and a half, enterprises started dipping their toe and started jumping into the water
Hmm.
and realizing that a lake house is really the plumbing underneath. It eliminates data silos, unifies your data, but it doesn't really give you intelligence on that data.
Hmm.
Gen AI kind of changed the game again. So
Hmm.
this data intelligence platform refers to not just a lake house, which is the foundation,
Hmm.
but putting meaning and context through Gen AI of all your data. So a couple examples. One is it just lets non-technical, technical people just talk to your data. You could
Hmm.
do it in any of your native languages. Ask questions like you probably did ChatGPT. Um, but the challenge with that ChatGPT is that it's trained on the entire world of data. So
Hmm.
it's trained on Taylor Swift lyrics. It's trained on World War One trivia. And if
Hmm.
you want to know, who are my customers I should be calling today that are likely to churn,
Hmm.
it's not trained on your data. So now
Hmm.
companies want a data intelligence platform so they could talk to their data, they could have it all governed. It understands the context of your data.
Hmm.
So shout out to the people in India. The word cricket is a sport, but cricket could be an insect.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, so you want it trained on the language of your industry,
Hmm.
and you also want it to have access to your data. So,
Hmm.
for example, plug into your Salesforce data, plug into your Slack messages, so you can ask questions. What were the most common IT support issues for us? Or you're a
Hmm.
call center. We
Hmm.
were talking beforehand. I went to India for the first time this year, and
Yeah.
a company that was using Gen AI. Whenever people would call their call center, it would pull up a dashboard based on the number saying,
Hmm.
here's the company, here's the last, here's their issues, here's their successes. So the call center person can immediately like start being more helpful than they were without it.
Hmm.
So that's all based on this data intelligence platform. And then on top of that, like there are co-pilots is like a major thing. I was at lunch with Satya, the CEO of Microsoft, and his big thing was, their co-pilots. How can you write software code, for example, that
Hmm.
auto completes?
Hmm.
Um, and the data intelligence platform, if it has your data um, and understands, like, let's just say you're a company, you have
Hmm.
10,000 tables, 100,000 columns.
Yeah.
Without data intelligence, a human has to like define what each column is.
Mm.
But now you can have AI um, make definitions of what each column is, what the data
Yeah.
is, what the table is, so
Hmm.
people could find information,
Yeah.
customer information, sales information, much more easier. So that's kind
Right.
of the data intelligence platform, and that's been the migration, pure data warehouse, pure lakehouse, pure data lake to a lakehouse, and now data intelligence platform. And
Hmm.
you're going to be seeing that more and more in the industry.
Oh, that was fascinating. So there's so much good stuff in there. I had a couple of follow-up questions. One, Ari, is that so it makes a lot of sense. For AI to be very effective, you really wanted to see everything inside the company, and what better way to power that other than a lake house where you bring in the structured data, unstructured data all in one place, so that AI can make connections across all of that. You mentioned the topic of models or AI focused on a company's vertical specific data. Um, is that the same as, the recent talk on SLMs, small language models, which are, much smaller parameters, but very focused? Is it the same thing, or are we, speaking about something else when we speak about very company specific models?
Yeah, so it could be the same, it could be different. So
Hmm.
when you think of large language models,
Hmm.
there's like foundational models like Llama, Databricks has DBRX. There's
Hmm.
a gazillion out there that keep getting better every week. So
Yeah.
these foundational models are built on like hundreds of billions of parameters and potentially trillions of records.
Hmm.
It's very expensive
Hmm.
to build these compared to the other options, but it could be very specific to your business. So
Hmm.
more energy meaning like more time and work put in to build these, but very more accurate insights.
Hmm.
Then there's fine tuning models. So you already have these foundation models another company has made, could be open source, could be proprietary, but
Hmm.
you're kind of injecting a ton of your own data
Yeah.
in it and tuning the model, but like how it interprets language underneath stays the same.
Hmm.
That's more easy to do, a little less specific. And then you have RAG, retrieval augmented generation,
Yeah.
where foundational model, you inject some PDFs or documents, PowerPoints, and uh, it's less accurate, but like pretty much 90% where the world is. So that's like the main thing. And now there's a new concept like making agents. So you have one model very good at predicting weather,
Yeah.
another model very good at some other thing, and you
Hmm.
string these models together,
Hmm.
picking along like the chain of like the logic, so you get the best outcome. It's much faster.
Hmm.
It's generally the most accurate or very
Hmm.
good at accuracy. So that's
Hmm.
another approach people are using. But you need both skilled people to do that, and you
Hmm.
need to have a knowledge of what are these models, what are there. There's laying chain, there's Hugging Face. I'm sure I'm
Hmm.
missing some. There's entities out there that help you
Yeah.
figure this out.
Hmm.
And then at Databricks, we have our own marketplace, not
Hmm.
just of data, but of models as well. So that kind
Okay.
of helps you along that process. But that's like one of the cutting edge, and I'm glad you brought that up, uh, techniques. uh,
Hmm.
of using these smaller models, chaining together to get the best performance. But
Okay.
underneath, you still want it um, partly based on public data, partly based on your proprietary data.
Hmm. Okay, makes sense. And one of the other things you mentioned was, you have the data intelligence platform, kind of a full stack solution with the lakehouse beneath it, and then it really helps the business users to go there and get value directly. And that brings to mind this whole concept of AutoML solutions that we've had for a while, and then with your own experience at DataRobo. So do you think with Gen AI, how do you think AutoML is going to evolve? Are we going to see an AutoML 2.0 come up? What do you think is going to happen there?
Yeah, 100%. So AutoML, I spent like 4 years of my life. That's all I was doing at Data Robot.
Yeah.
Um, they're the company that came up with the concept where you could have a PhD in data science
Hmm.
um, and math and statistics and write Python or R code to take data and make a model and evaluate it and push it into production. Um, could take weeks to do, but AutoML automates like the boring, repetitive, time-consuming parts of that. So
Hmm.
you just here's a data set, here's a target or what I'm trying to predict or classify,
Hmm.
and it runs through tons of different models and permutations, what are called hyperparameters. So kind of like pulls levers, changes dials, and it'll give a leaderboard of what the best option is. And
Okay.
that's super cool. That's like
Hmm.
it, it, it could do what would take months, could take now hours,
Yeah.
and you evaluate the accuracy. Since then, a lot of other companies, Dataiku, H2O, Databricks,
Hmm.
probably missing some, uh, SageMaker, like they have these auto ML capabilities, but that only brings you so much. The other half of the equation is ML ops or machine learning operations. Once you have 5, 10, 100, 1,000 models, the data drifts in the real world most of the time. The models sometimes get less accurate. Um, so you want to have a dashboard to to see, here's 1,000 models,
Hmm.
here's which ones you want to recalibrate. That's still very human based. And then Gen AI injected in it. These models are very classical predictions, classifications, time series. And with Gen AI, I think my personal opinion is it's very hard to evaluate how effective is like a large language model. It summarized this document
Hmm.
and 5 bullet points. It's still that gut feel. That was a good translate. That was a good summary, or that sucked.
Yeah.
There's no metric like in classic AI. You could have things called like R squared or log loss, Gini norm. Where you RMSE, where you can put a number and say this model is better than that. So
Hmm.
right now we're at an effect where you need humans in the loop to evaluate, here's an LLM. Like Databricks, we have this AI playground where you can try, tons of different models. Then you can give it a thumbs up, a thumbs down. You could say, here's what I liked about the result, here's where I didn't. And then that's a human doing that, and that reinforces the AI model. So I personally think this AutoML for
Hmm.
Gen AI has room to grow. It's
Hmm.
still needs humans in the loop a lot, um, but the more that you can automate, the faster you could scale. Challenge now
Hmm.
is like when you're summarizing text,
Hmm.
I still don't know like how can you quantify it. There's companies that have metrics like things called Levenstein distances, but fundamentally those are kind of human evaluation as well. Humans saying this result is great, therefore did my new result match the other result? But in the end, humans are still involved. But
Yeah.
wherever there's automation that could be done, the
Hmm.
boring, time-consuming parts, uh, there should be that automation in Gen AI. And we're not there yet, but fully. But in the coming years, I'm excited to see how that shakes out.
Yeah. You're right, which is, I mean, I think so much of the benchmarking with the quality of Gen AI output, especially in business use cases kind of still falls to the human to kind of say how accurate it is to the current scenario. When an enterprise is considering purchasing Databricks, I'm trying to understand what are the different components of the solution that you provide. Does one always need the lakehouse as part of the solution, or can one start at the analytics layer and then get the lakehouse?
We're purely like consumption based. So it's
Mhm,
like the more you use the platform to do compute,
mhm,
you only pay for what you use. So that's
mhm,
one reason we're growing so quickly, 50, 60% per year. Our Databricks SQL,
mhm,
which is like our serverless, SQL warehouse, is one of the fastest, if not the fastest growing, enterprise, B2B software on the market today. You pay for what you consume, and like when you're idle, you're not paying. So
mhm.
people love that cost. They also love the scalability since it can scale to trillions of records, and then
Yeah.
it's like super simple. Like
Mhm,
we started out as a Spark company. You mentioned open source. Like we're founded on the open source platforms of Spark, Delta Lake, and ML Flow, and now I would say one of the top selling reasons people want to purchase Databricks is what we call Unity Catalog, which also we open sourced this past June. And
mhm,
that's like the governance layer, which is so important now. And you could govern data that's not within Databricks too,
mhm,
to your
mhm.
the data could be residing at rest in a number of formats and number of vendors, and
Yeah.
you could govern and catalog it all through Unity Catalog.
Mhm,
And then, on top of it, we are very partner focused, so we love
mhm,
going through partners. But if you wanted, it's called PayGo, pay as you go,
mhm,
pay $50 a year. You could do
mhm,
that. Um, some people don't want to speak with sales, but once you start growing
mhm,
and you're consuming a lot, people merge into what's called a commit,
mhm,
where you pay for a certain amount, you get a discount,
mhm.
for using a larger volume. So
Yeah.
that's like the other model. But like with our
Mhm,
partners, you could also pay extra if you want consulting services along with that.
mhm. Got it. You said something very interesting, which is one of the primary reasons people buy Databricks is because of the Unity catalog, which I assume is a data catalog. Did that come as a surprise to you that that value component is so big in the equation, or is that something you just stumbled across in your conversations?
Yeah, well, it's a natural progression since
Mm,
there is sprawl out there. Like data platforms would grow pretty much without bounds.
yeah.
You want to do experiments. You just want to build things and throw things in, and some of it was natural growth. Some
Hmm.
of it was intentional. But when I say governance, or we say
Hmm.
governance, some people immediately think governance means one layer where it's like password control and
Hmm.
one thing to block people from seeing data. And
Hmm.
that's super important. That's where like insurance, healthcare,
Hmm.
financial sector, public sector are very, uh, they need that, they require that. But governance also could mean like adding transparency, removing black boxes. So one of the
Hmm.
most popular things is lineage. What When you have raw data, what is the
Hmm.
lineage? How are they merged together to the end result? So we're talking the raw data, we're talking the notebooks or like the
Yeah.
software programs that are written, and
Yeah.
then the end applications or the end business intelligence reports. So you could say this one source of data, like Social Security, here are all the notebooks that use it. We also do data sharing with 1,000 partners. Here's the 50 of the 1,000 partners that have access to it, and immediately. So lineage is like really helpful to say downstream or upstream, if I change something, what will break, what will be affected, and the data science models as well. Which, if the data is changing a lot, the interest rate changes. Which models are based on interest rates. So
Right.
lineage is huge, audit trails, like who did what, and then just dashboards of what data assets are being used.
Hmm.
Uh, how much money are you paying? Like in the world of Gen AI,
Hmm.
sometimes you can ask a question and it could cost your company $1,000 and you didn't like even know it. So you
Hmm.
ask 10 questions, it's $10,000.
Right.
You have no idea, but that's where the Unity catalog uh, is gaining even more traction of cost control, and you could like limit people, or you could have alerts, and it's an innocent thing. You just don't know. You're asking your business intelligence or business analyst. You
Yeah.
don't know how much your questions are costing.
Yeah.
So like those types of dashboards, and like one thing, working with the Texas Rangers, world champion last year
Hmm.
baseball team, they loved Unity Catalog since it would tell them what data was not being accessed. So
Hmm.
they would spend so much time and energy, fly players from around the world, go into a lab, wear the devices, measure them, and
Hmm.
they realized only a few people at their organization knew this data existed.
Hmm.
So they were shocked, and so they're like, let's start evangelizing. We are collecting player performance data.
Yeah.
And so they send emails out, and then the usage of it went up sevenfold. The
Yeah.
number of people using it, I should say, went up
Hmm.
sevenfold. That's
It is
all
also.
governance. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and so then now it's not surprising at all. It just seems like the Unity catalog, provides more ROI per unit of data inside your organization. It just flushes it out, puts metrics around it, makes it easily accessible with governance layer around it. And I would think that the lineage that you specifically emphasized on is probably all the more important right now, given what kind of a black box more of these LLM models are. You want to see what's going into the RAG and what's fine-tuning the models.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing holding companies back
Hmm.
from deploying LLMs. A
Hmm.
lot of companies are deploying it internally. So,
Hmm.
like, it's kind of safe. Your employee could see, you know, ask questions of Salesforce. I use it at Databricks. We have this, we call it Marge Marketing
Hmm.
Genie. Genie is like our word for chatbot internally.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, it's kind of safe. But once you open it up to the public,
Yeah.
um, even if it's 99.9% accurate, 1 out of 1,000, if it says this product is free in the store, you might be liable. So that's where governance comes in, and Unity Catalog to help reduce the chances of that happening. So that's why it's Unity Catalog and governance in general of the underlying data. Once you do a model, is this insight based on from lineage data that's 5 years old or data
Hmm.
that's 5 days old?
Hmm.
Those are the types of insights you can get.
That's very valuable. Makes a lot of sense. Switching gears a little bit, Ari, uh, what was your initial motivation to go into baseball and sports analytics? Was sports a very earlier adopter of analytics, or did you have to push it in, or how did that happen?
Yeah, I was an undergraduate at Caltech, the
Mm.
California Institute of Technology, just a teenager.
Hmm.
And I was a huge sports fan, but I was frustrated since some of the players I thought was great would have bad statistics and vice versa. And it just kind of suddenly came to me that it's a team sport. How do you attribute value to a player when
Hmm.
sometimes it's the fault of players around them? That you could call it luck, you could call it teamwork, and I instantly came up with it's now all over the world, the letter X for
Hmm.
expected. So expected goals, expected wins, and it just made sense based on the probability of some event happening, what was expected and was reality above or below it. So you could find overvalued and undervalued players. And that's fundamentally still used across sports. It's
Hmm.
pretty wild. So when I started with at Caltech, started working with the Los Angeles Dodgers, dear friend of mine, Fred Clare, was the general manager.
Hmm.
Very few teams in the world were doing stuff like that. I'm one of 5 people that I know about at that time that was employed by a team in what you might call like even a business analyst or a data analyst. So almost nobody was doing it, but as long as we had Fred, our GM looking into it. That's all that mattered, is my organization was doing it. And we actually had a huge advantage over teams that weren't doing it. When do you put in players in a situation? When do you relieve people, put in substitute players? How might a player perform based on predicted future value versus on the past? And then the movie Moneyball was a long time later, but that depicted a lot of the resistance in culture. And that's
Hmm.
why I think the movie and the story is so popular, is everyone can relate. As every industry is going through a massive, potentially massive change due to Gen AI. Um, how do people innovate? There are going to be a lot of jobs that are automated, like based on our AutoML conversation,
Hmm.
Python development. My kids are going to school, college. And I'm like, I don't know in 4 years from now. Like, I think the concept of programming will always, and logic and math, always be helpful. I think understanding business and data is going to be even more.
Hmm.
But people are resistant since it's a new way of doing things, and millions, if not tens of millions of jobs are going to be automated, and people are either going to have to level up or like shift their responsibility.
Yeah.
Um, and at the same time, though, in baseball, my experience is sometimes I would agree with the resistance, since you don't want to make a change just since it sounds cool. You want evidence. If we get this player, is it really going to work out? If
Hmm.
you change this approach, will it really work out? So healthy skepticism, like I don't always say innovate just since it sounds cool and other people are innovating. It has to be right for you. You might be doing things right now. Um, but yeah, to your point, there
Hmm.
was and there still is a lot of resistance in sports.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's very inspiring, and maybe AI might just, like you said, put us all out of a job, and we might just have a lot more time to spend at baseball games. So, we'll probably get, allowances to help us do that. The other thing I was curious about, Ari, is that is there something in AI that we are not paying too much attention to right now that you think is going to have a significant impact over the next 5, 6 years?
Yeah,
Um,
5 year, yeah.
yeah.
5 years is so hard to predict. Like I
Mm,
used to have my own podcast and we'd say 10 to 20 years, what will the world be like? And people could probably predict it. And
mm,
now like 3 years, it's hard to predict. So I can only do prediction based on like linear path. If
mm,
there's no new innovation, here's incremental integration, assuming everyone's going to be on LLMs. But I can tell you there's going to be more disruption, in a good way, I think, and faster. Um, and when I hear Gen AI, there's like two main buckets. One is where I'm focused on, which is and Databricks, like business Gen AI, enterprise Gen AI. How can you get more intelligent insights from your data, and how can you encapsulate the real world digitally? And then there's Gen AI for non-business, so creating things, creating music videos. Let's make a new Beatles song based on the past. Let's make trying to remember the name, but there's like a video game that generates Minecraft as you play, and it's not the actual source code for Minecraft. It's just mimicking watching other people play Minecraft. You look up and you look down and the world's changed. So I think from a general standpoint, huge innovation. I can't wait to see movies like make a movie, Curb Your Enthusiasm, based on my life, or make
mm,
a Project Pro um, uh, like movie based on the life of Binny, and it'll be really good. Make
mhm.
it funny, make it sad, make video games that are tuned to what you like. That is going to be much more commonplace in 5 years, and I'm going to love it. I That's how my brain works. Think you're going to be entertained like never before. And then the world of business, just it's companies are still tinkering. Production LLMs are exciting, but not fully embraced. Internally they are, but not externally. So I think, yeah, you will see breakthroughs. You're going to see way more accurate insights. Um, it's going to, based on like those smart agents that you were talking about earlier. Right now, if you were to do something like that, there's not enough power. You need to build whatever nuclear plants or solar plants or whatever to build massive data centers. It's just not there yet for this compute. But that potentially through this agent-based system
Hmm.
could be more dynamic, and the end result is you will be able to make questions, ask all information from human history that's ever been recorded, including videos, every video ever made, every social media post publicly available. Um, and the insights will be way more um, improved. And that's going to disrupt, like, I think in a good way, every industry. And it's going to be a brave new world, so to speak, where you're going to be interacting with AI. AI is going to automate your calendar. AI is going to automate your email responses to AI generated email. Like it could
Hmm.
be, we're all going to get, a billion emails a day,
Yeah.
and AI will be writing them, and AI will be filtering them. And my brain doesn't even know where that will go. That's like my 5 year prediction. But
Okay.
yeah, businesses are going to be smarter. More Gen AI use cases will go into production.
Hmm.
The world economically will become more efficient
Hmm.
in every single industry.
That's extremely, optimistic and powerful. For our personal life, we're going to get personalized entertainment. And then inside our companies, we're going to have agents automating most of our workflows. On that note, Ari, thank you so much. I know you have a packed day and you have something else right after this. Thank you for making time to do this with us. Really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. I appreciate listening to your other podcasts. Thank you for having me. All the best to you. And for people still listening, we're at the end. I appreciate you investing the time.
Thank you. Thanks, Ari.